Okay, guys, let's just have a seat there, and I'll get started. Just before we start the Q&A session here, just give you a couple of caveats, okay? Number one, CMI is a non-denominational ministry. It means we travel all over Canada and the world. We have 7 offices worldwide, and our speakers speak at all different types of churches. So I'm not here to deal with any denominational issues, okay? So please don't ask me about eschatology or something like that, okay? It's not what we deal with. We're here to deal with creation, evolution, the book of Genesis, you know, just the non-controversial stuff. So if you have any controversial questions, you can ask your pastor, okay? And even things like global warming, I know a lot of people know, well, wow, you guys have scientists on staff, like real PhDs, and we do. And so they want to, ask questions about global warming and stuff. Well, that's not a creation question. That's more like a Christian wisdom question, and so that's not something we're talking about here too. The third thing will be, if you have a question, basically we're just going to keep it simple. Just throw your hand up, okay? Ask your question. I'll try to repeat it back so that if you're in the front, the people at the back can hear what the question is. I can't promise you I'll be able to answer it, but hopefully I can at least give you a direction to a resource that might be able to help you. And then, but please ask it in the form of a question. Okay, sometimes people have stories they want to tell you, or this happened with my friend and all that stuff, and that's fine. You can come and talk to me later on. But just for the, because we've only got a certain amount of time here, if you can just ask it in the form of a question, that would be great. So, who's got a question on anything? Just shoot your hand up and we'll get started. Yes?
How would you reconcile carbon dating?
How would I reconcile carbon dating? Well, usually when I'm asked about things like carbon dating or any kind of radioisotope dating, actually, I do a whole talk on the age of the Earth, and of course that's a big part of it, etc. And the Answers book has got a whole section on these dating methods. But let me just start with this, okay? Here's a wood sample from Oak Island, from Brock University, okay? Now, I cut and pasted this right from Brock's website, so if you want to copy this down, okay, just scroll down and you'll find this, and I cut and pasted that sentence right from Brock's website, and it said this: calculated age is plus 3,000 years into the future, repeated sample, and got the same results. Now, remember I was telling you guys about data, and then you interpret the data? Well, here's the fact that we're all looking at. We're all looking at the fact that they've got a piece of coalified wood. They've done carbon dating testing to it several times, and it comes out at an age of plus 3,000 years into the future. How do you deal with that? Well, if you guys know about carbon dating, of course, when you're alive, carbon dating only works on things that have been once alive, right? So you're absorbing carbon-12, carbon-14, but when you die, you stop absorbing C14. Now, we can measure the decay rates of certain isotopes. We've got great equipment to do that, right? And so what you do is you say, well, if this is, if it was at equilibrium when it was alive, and we can detect that, there's only this much of it left because of the half-life decay rate, then we can estimate how old it is, right? Which is a logical way of thinking about something. So when I'm explaining radioisotope dating to people, I say, it's kind of like this. Here's an analogy for basically all these types of dating methods, okay? Let's say I had a candle, and it was 12 inches tall, and I stick it down, and I light it, and I want to know the decay rate of the candle. How long will it take till there's none of that left? The decay rate of different isotopes, an analogy. Now let's say I look at the clock and I light it, and I notice that every hour, an inch goes off the candle. So the decay rate of the candle is 1 inch per hour. Okay? That's what I've observed. They're doing that with all of these different ones. Uranium to lead, rubidium to strontium, all this stuff. Now let's say I walk into a room and I see a candle, and I've never been in the room before. It's 6 inches tall, the candle's lit. How long has that candle been burning? Nobody answers? Well, the most common answer I would get would be 6 hours. Because I just explained, right? Every hour that goes by, I lost an hour off the candle. Wouldn't that make sense logically from what you've, observed? But the problem is I'm making a lot of assumptions here. How do I know that the candle wasn't 2 feet tall to start with? How do I know someone didn't open up the window, the wind's been blowing, and it's been decaying faster than what I observed? How do I know that someone didn't light the candle, snuff it out, that was 10 years ago, and someone relit the candle 5 seconds before I walked into the room. I don't know any of these things. So there's a whole bunch of assumptions made with these dating methods. Now, when you see something like this, and this is on their website, obviously you talk to someone there and you say, well, how do you explain plus 3,000 years into the future? Somebody go off into space, you know, in the future, come back and drop a piece of wood that they, like, that's not going to fly. They say, well, it's been contaminated. Say, okay, how do you know when something's been contaminated and when it hasn't been contaminated? And they say, well, we know this has because there's too much C14 in it. But that's not an answer, is it? How do you know when other things haven't been and have been? See, many times people get taught that these dating methods are absolute dating methods, but they're not. They don't just hang their hats on these certain things. For example, these fellows are dating some Egyptian artifacts, okay? And interesting quote from this book. They said, if a C14 date supports our theories, we put it in the main text. If it does not entirely contradict them, we put it in a footnote, and if it's completely out of date, we just drop it. Do you guys see a challenge with that? That's not science, that's called cherry picking your data. I wonder why all the good dates are in the books. Now, by the way, if you're a thinker here, if a C14 date supports our theories, what does that mean? Doesn't that mean they already think they know how old it is? How would they know if the date's good, bad, or ugly if they don't think they already know how old it is? So are they using C14 dating here as an absolute method? We just spin the dial, man, whatever it comes out to. That's how old it is? No. They're using it in conjunction with other types of dating, right? Now, that's carbon dating. Carbon dating would not date anything older than, let's say, 90,000 years because of the decay rate. Okay, so that's the most common when people know, though. So people will say, well, carbon dating proves millions of years. Well, no, it can't, because it can only date something up to about 90,000 years. Okay, it's those other dating methods you've heard about that can supposedly give dates of millions of years. By the way, here's a real challenge. Do you know that dinosaur bones have been carbon dated now? Do you know they have always found carbon in the bones? Do you guys see the problem with that? Carbon dating, carbon can only last for 90,000 years. How old are dinosaurs supposed to be? 65 million years old. So how could you have C14 in a dinosaur that's supposedly millions of years old? See, there's a lot of things that contradict the evolutionary timeline that people just aren't aware of. And that's the kind of stuff that our ministry publishes, and we quote the secular journals. We're not making this stuff up. We're going to their journals and we're pointing out the problems with it, okay? Now, there's all sorts of different challenges with these dating methods. For example, many of you here may have been taught that these dating methods, that they're absolute. The decay rates of these things are absolute, they never change, etc. How many people have heard that? Okay? Well, if you actually go to people who use these methods, you're going to hear a different story. For example, this is from New Scientist from 2006. Professor Klaus Rolfs from Ruhr University, talking about his article, Half-Life Heresy. Half-life to do with, you know, how long it takes for an isotope to degrade. Heresy, you know what that is, against the common teaching. He said, when I was studying physics, my teacher said nuclear properties are independent of the environment. You can put nuclei in the oven or the freezer or any chemical environment and the nuclear properties will stay the same. That's not true anymore. He's actually done experiments where the decay rates have fluctuated, have been different. So these aren't absolute methods. As a matter of fact, at one of the universities in Stanford, they've recently published a report, well recently, it was like 2010 now, but they said that there was a fellow that was studying radioisotopes and he noticed the decay rates change, and they've actually linked that to solar flares on the sun. And they're completely puzzled. They're saying, how can there be some kind of communication? How would a solar flare affect these decay rates? And yet they're saying it's an effect no one yet understands. Theorists are starting to say what's going on, but that's what the evidence points to. It's a challenge for the physicists and a challenge for the solar people too. So here's the thing, guys. Sooner or later, you're going to have to realize something. You're going to have to make a call on what is your ultimate authority. Okay? You've got these facts, they can be interpreted different ways, Before 2010, we didn't know that things could fluctuate like that. Here's another example. Mount St. Helens blows up in 1980. Finally, when the lava dome completely settles, solidifies, we've got brand new rock. There's no retained age in this rock, right? It's melted. Creationists and evolutionists are expecting this to come out to calibrate to zero, basically. They did all sorts of different radioisotope dating methods, all different types, but they ranged between 340,000 up to 2.8 million years, except the calculated age, or the actual age was less than 25 years. You can go to creation.com, put up Mount St. Helens dating methods, and you're going to get all the scientific data, the different results from the different science reports. So, see, here's the thing about these dating methods. Again, we're talking about something that supposedly happened in the past, but nobody was there. Nobody has observed millions of years. That's a mental construct, and then they're using methods like this to try to determine these things. Here's my favorite quote to try to help Christians to understand this whole age of the earth issue, because this is the biggest issue for Christians. Many Christians will go, no, we don't believe in biological evolution, but we've got to believe in millions of years, although the Bible teaches against millions of years. I'll give you an example. Remember when Jesus was teaching on marriage, and he said, haven't you read that from the beginning of the creation I created them male and female? You guys remember that passage? From the beginning of the creation, I created them male and female. Well, that makes sense if you've got a young earth about 6,000 years ago, because Adam and Eve were created on the 6th day. If the earth is 4.6 billion years old and the universe is 13 point something billion years old, they weren't created at the beginning of the creation. They were created at the end of the creation, and Jesus is wrong. Who's Jesus again? Some good philosopher? Some really good teacher? No, he's the creator of the universe, according to Colossians. So if he couldn't get it right, we've got a big problem as Christians. But let me put this into context here with this quote from Jerry Trout. He's a cave specialist with, Carlsbad Cavern. It's got all the stalactites and stalagmites and stuff. It's been dated to be very old. And he's worked there, and here's what he said. From 1924 to 1988, there was a visitor sign above the entrance to Carlsbad Caverns that said Carlsbad was at least 260 million years old. In 1988, the sign was changed to read 7 to 10 million years old. Then for a little while, the sign read that it was 2 million years old, and now the sign's gone. Well, that usually gets a chuckle out of my audiences, but I work with scientists. They'd say, well, what's so funny about that? You get new data, you update your ideas. That's the way science works, right? You guys working in sciences, anybody here would know that, right? But the point is this, okay? If you're little Johnny, okay, it's 1988, you get spandex on, your hair's piked up to here, You guys have seen those old videos? And you walk in, man, this place is 260 million years old. And your little brother comes in on his field trip the next year, and you say, man, this place is 7 to 10. What was truth? What was fact? Which one of those dates is a fact, guys? None of them is a fact. Do you know why? Because nobody was there. This is a perfect example of historical science. Is anybody on the planet today arguing what the temperature water boils at sea level on the planet? No. Because we could take a burner right here, right now, and put some water on it, and we could light the thing, and we could stick our thermometer in, and we get the same result because we're observing the result in real time. Nobody is observing millions of years. Nobody was there. It's an interpretation of facts. This is a key concept that you guys need to get into your head. So when you're sitting there and they say, look at this fact, look, there's a dead thing in a rock layer. See, do you understand that there isn't an observation that a creationist and an evolutionist makes that we don't agree with? We all agree with the observation. Look, there's a dead thing in a rock. Sure is. Yeah, and it's 60 million years old. No. It's very young. It actually got buried in a great flood. Two different interpretations, same fact. So just if you can keep that in mind, you'll be able to understand this issue. More about radioisotope dating. There's a whole section on it in the Creation Answers book. Okay, tons of articles on the website. There's actually a whole section geology, biology, chemistry, whole sections on the website, tons of articles. So our geologists like Taz Walker and Dr. Emil Silvestru, they'll have articles, scientific articles to help you navigate through that. So hopefully that gives you enough just to get you thinking about these things. Other questions? Oh, that's it? Yes.
Okay, so like I've sometimes heard people say the Bible also states that the earth is flat based on the story in Joshua with the sun standing still and the moon standing still. It's like, what would you say to that? Would you say maybe that's an example of a Bible passage where maybe the most literal meaning isn't?
Well, number one, I don't know how you get flat earth out of the sun.
I mean, the earth doesn't rotate, sorry.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, number one, the Bible doesn't teach that the earth is flat. That was actually invented by an atheist. We've got an article on the website, just put in flat earth, and you're going to see that it wasn't, the majority of the Christian church has always believed in a round earth.
Yeah. It's
a pretty easy thing to do, right? You're standing on the shores over in England, and you look and you see it goes like this, and you can actually see the curvature of the earth, and you can see the boats disappear. So this idea that Christians thought that. But the Bible doesn't teach that. As a matter of fact, I think it's a verse in Isaiah where God says, and he looks down upon the circle of the earth. Now the Hebrew word for circle there that we've translated as circle is kug, K-H-U-G. That's the way we've translated it in English. So kug means sphere. So in the Bible it actually teaches a round earth. So it doesn't matter what somebody in the past looked at the Bible and then said, oh, that's what it meant. I don't care what somebody interpreted it as. It's what does the Bible actually say? So when we see passages in the Bible, we still use terms like, oh, the sun rose today, right? Don't we all say stuff like that? What time does the sun rise? Well, we know the sun's not rising. We know that now. But we use that type of terminology because it relates to our point of view, even though scientifically we understand differently. And the Bible says those types of things the same way because it was written from our point of view. But it's still scientifically accurate. I've never seen anything in the Bible that wasn't scientifically accurate. So we don't say take the Bible literally, right? Because wooden literalism is not an accurate way to read the scripture. You don't think that the trees actually clap and all that kind of stuff. But you take it as plainly written. So if you come across any kind of parable or something in the Bible, it's still teaching a truth through a parable, even if the parable story wasn't true. So for example, if I said to you guys something like, man, I'm so hungry I could eat a horse. You're probably not going to take me out for dinner and say, wow, we've got to feed Cal a horse. Because everybody knows the common way I'm saying is I'm just really hungry, right? It would be impossible for a person to eat a whole horse, we hope, anyway. We're big people. So that's the way we say take the Bible. It's plainly written, not in wooden literalism. And anyway, hopefully that answers your question. There's a lot of articles on Galileo, the whole Galileo issue, all that kind of stuff, in Joshua's Long Day and stuff like that on the website as well. Other questions? Yes?
So if we believe that public school teachings are very biased, and if we have kids in the future, what can we do to help our kids grow and teach them the right things?
Well, the fact is, there's a lot of different options Christians have for educating their kids, and you can make use of those options, right? You can send them to a public school, you can send them to a Christian school, you can homeschool them, there's lots of different things you can do. But whatever manner of education you do to teach your kids, we need to understand something. The parents are ultimately responsible for their kids and their education and their welfare and every aspect of their lives. So the thing is, can all people homeschool? Probably not. And if they want a higher education, they can't, because sooner or later they got to come to a university. But we tell people it's just prepare your kids to understand what the world is teaching against the Bible so that they'll have answers for it. Because even if you homeschool your kids, you just teach them the Bible and all that kind of stuff, and they come off to university, and I've seen this happen many times, okay? They come out to a university, and it's just like it just blows their mind. Look at all this evidence of revolution. Yeah, but all these other religions are just, and they throw away their faith. I've seen it happen so many times. Matter of fact, I cut my teeth on this area of apologetics when I did a Bible study group at the UW, and I would see new people come into our Bible study, man, this is great, you're doing your Bible study. We'd be like, yeah, come on in, And then 6 months later, I'd meet them in the hall, and I'd be like, hey, I haven't seen you at Bible study. Yeah, well, I'm not interested in religion anymore. 6 months. No apologetic defense for their faith. And so, you can take that theologically however you'd like to, but that's just the experience I noticed. So whatever way you teach your kids, whatever way you educate them, okay, you need to equip them with what the world's teaching that goes against what God's Word says. So no matter what style of teaching you do, okay? But the Bible's very clear that the student becomes like the